Hello and welcome. This is Home Life for Extraordinary Impact. My name is Matt Barrios. I'm a husband, dad, researcher, and writer, and I am focused on exploring global perspectives on homes. For that, I get to interview and research the homes of experts and everyday folks all around the world. And it's been such a blast to get to have these conversations with folks so that I can hopefully deliver to you who are listening some new insights, some new ideas for how you can transform your quality of life at home. Today, I get to interview a special guest from the Great North, Vancouver, not Vancouver, Washington, Vancouver, Canada. And this is Dai Manuel. He is a dad. He's an entrepreneur. He's, even just before I hit record, it's just so clear this is a man of energy and excitement and delight. And I'm just so excited to have a conversation with you, Dai. So welcome to the show.
Matt, it's totally awesome to be here. Like, really, I've been looking forward to this conversation as I've been creeping you online and sort of preparing for our connection today. And I've really been looking forward to it. You know, from one dad to another dad, we got to, get together and support. That's the one thing I realized when I first became a father. I was like, whoa. This is like a big island, and at times I feel very alone on it. It's funny. Mom's got it all figured out, right? Like they're like, whoa. Dads, I mean, we're like, so, it's just kind of weird, right?
Yeah, that is so true. The dads group culture hasn't really taken off in the world in the same way that the mom group culture has, for sure.
Correct.
Well, I'm excited to chat with you about everything. Fatherhood, family, home, I mean, just like anywhere that we find ourselves, I'm excited to have a conversation with you. And just as a jumping off point for that, so what are the sort of things that you like to do at home to really help you show up fully as yourself in the world and the sort of stuff that you're up for?
Wow. Well, I'm a big believer that your home is your sanctuary, right? It's your place for creating calmness and stillness, but also for creating some great memories, especially when you consider family units, right? And significant relationships, hosting people. So for me, it's really all about having my own little space within that sanctuary, if you will. So for me, actually, I'm in it right now. This is my little space. And it's funny, right? My eldest daughter, when she graduated a few years ago and moved out, I was like, hell yeah, I'm taking the den back, And I got to do it up the way I wanted, with things that inspire me, some nostalgic little mementos. As you can see, I'm a total comic book nerd. Awesome. I love my Marvel. I love my DC. I love my original prints. But they're things that I just really, it brings me joy. And nostalgia is real. It's very real. And, I'm also an 80s kid. So, I love all that sort of fun stuff. And for me, it's just taking some time to be in that space and just sort of decompress. Mm-hmm. And more importantly, set my day up. It's one of my favorite things. I'm an early morning riser. I have been for, almost 30 years now. Since I was 18, I've been getting up between 4:30 and 5 a.m. And I like that because it's quiet. Nobody else is getting up yet. My kids would still be asleep. My wife would still be asleep. I get my own space. I set my day up, and it just provides me with this great sort of I don't know the best way to put it, but it's intentional energy, for the day ahead. So for me, that's really important. So, but keeping things tidy and clean, I'm a bit of a neat freak that way, and thankfully so is my partner. Otherwise, man, we'd be in a world of trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what I'm hearing described, like a through line of what you're saying, is this like real place for you to be you, fortress of solitude, a reference to your comic book collection.
Superman. I love it.
Yeah. And then also this space before the world's awake, you're awake and you are like getting a moment to yourself. I love that. And tidiness, I'm hearing that for sure as a theme as I'm doing this research, interviewing folks around the world, like that can actually set people's day up to be positive or negative. It's so surprising and also not surprising, I know I experienced that for myself. Okay, so you are based in Vancouver, Canada. Would you tell me a little bit about kind of your neighborhood, the culture and feel of it?
Yeah, so for those that are familiar with Seattle, we're just a couple hours north. You just got to sort of hop over the border there, and we live downtown Vancouver. We're urban dwellers. We live in a condo, and we've had other places. We've been in townhomes, we've been in homes, but we really prefer the smaller space. We're more or less minimalist, with the exception of my comics. Other than that, we're quite minimalist, and so we like a small, tight, clean space. And that's sort of been our mantra as a family for quite a while, but especially when we went traveling and lived nomadically for a few years, you learn how to live out of suitcases and what's really essential versus not. And for us, we love it because we can walk everywhere. We have one vehicle for our family, and it stays parked a lot of the time, because we can walk everywhere. And downtown Vancouver is very cool because surrounding it is a lot of greens, also a lot of water. We have the waterways. We have literally outside my door here, about 20 feet past, there's something called the seawall, which literally goes all around the downtown Vancouver and around a big park area called Stanley Park. And we have the North Shore mountain view that we can always see. So it's just a wonderful place. Very, very lovely. And as I say to everybody, if you can get to Vancouver in the spring or summer, even early fall, you'll probably not want to leave. And that's been our experience, and it usually is other people's experiences too.
It sounds beautiful. I got to visit Vancouver once, years and years and years ago, and I certainly fell in love with the city. I was like, man, this is beautiful. Like, I love the feel and the vibe of the people, the access to green and water and everything. I just thought it was a really, really great place. Now, you mentioned that you decided really intentionally to be urban dwellers, right? Like, we're going to live in the city center. What have you noticed about your quality of life when you have not lived in an urban center versus when you have lived in an urban center?
Well, for us, I think it's also because of the social aspects of just how my wife and I have been, like our networking, our friends groups. We found that, we did move out to the boonies. And what I mean by that is we were about a 45 to a 1 hour commute away from the city. And at the time, for me, that was also problematic because I had a chain of retail stores I was a co-founder in this company. And so we were spread out over what's called the Vancouver Lower Mainland, and it's quite a large geographical space. So we had all these stores spread out, and at times I would visit some of the locations. But my head office, the main office where my office was, and I'd spend some time at home, but I'd more often go into one of our flagship locations, and it involved quite a commute. And at the end of the day, the commuting is crazy, right? Like, so much of our day gets chewed up by that. If you're someone that's actively going somewhere else to work, and a lot of us get pushed out of the urban central because we start thinking, well, if I'm going to have a family, I'm going to need more space. And
Sure.
The funny thing about more space, you fill it with stuff. Give yourself more space, you just fill it with more things. And you got to ask yourself, do you own the things or the things own you, right? And I've gone through that process myself. And it's both cathartic, but also scary when you start to lighten the load of all those worldly possessions, right? But for us, it made a lot more sense. Like, our quality of life was really amazing, even when our kids were just babies, very young, before we decided, maybe we should have more space. We'll move out to where we can have more space, and it's more affordable to have more space. But then we made the transition, and we were just missing downtown. We found ourselves coming down here every weekend anyways, connecting with our friend groups that were still downtown. Because we were young parents. We had our kids. I was mid-20s. My wife was early 20s. We were the first in our friend groups to have children. So it was a big novelty for everybody. We had no short supply of babysitters because everyone's like, we'll take the baby for a night. And we're like, hell yeah, that's great, But they all lived in the downtown or surrounding areas. And I remember we'd get up and we'd very often we'd go for a walk. This is what we do now, like urban living. We get up, we go out, we grab a coffee, we walk the seawall, we can watch the sun come up or go down. It's just our lifestyle is very suitable for urban living. Plus, I'm an avid hiker. So I get plenty of opportunity to get away and do some occasional hikes here and there. I just did a week-long hike on the West Coast Trail of Canada, so I was off grid, for a week. And that's great because I get the benefits of both worlds, but I do recognize we need that time alone as well and our time to enjoy nature. And it's really how it's meant to be enjoyed. And so I do try to find some balance with that.
I mean, that sounds kind of like a perfect place for you to live then, if you're able to be that accessible to such beautiful green places, go on your hikes and that kind of thing, and also have the very day-to-day experience of city life and what it provides access for. I mean, that sounds like a really great combination of things for you.
And we're a tourist city with great food. So, and I don't know if you remember when you were here, you probably got a chance to get around to some of the restaurants. Even now, there's more and more restaurants. Like this, my wife and I were talking about it the other day. We're like, "Hey, have you heard of this place? You heard of this place?" And I'm like, "I haven't heard of any of these places." So there's we have quite. If you're a foodie, you'll love Vancouver. I can say that for sure.
Gosh. You're making me want to take another trip back up there.
My
wife's family is like up in Seattle, north of Seattle area, and so I've got like an easy in if I just want to go pop over to Vancouver for a while. So I mean, I might need to do that eventually.
You got to tell me, Matt, if you're coming, you got to let me know, and we'll connect, and I'll show you around. It'll be great.
Sounds wonderful. I'll totally hit you up. That sounds so fun.
Good.
As a fellow, also like foodie city, San Francisco, where I'm living, I know how much like the access to really high quality food totally does just like up your quality of life. Like it's kind of amazing. Sure. And when I go to these places where there's not as much of a food culture, like you it's not like a live to eat kind of place, you know. But I feel like in San Francisco there's a lot of people who are just like, oh, I actually live to have like really great fine food. So does Vancouver have that sort of feel to it, or not really?
I think there's a blend to that. It's funny. Vancouver does get criticized for not having much of a nightlife, even though it does, but it's not maybe as well developed as some other cities, especially some other Canadian cities like Montreal or Toronto, as an example. They're thriving, and they have a real robust nightlife. But we have our places. We have our areas, like even Chinatown. There's an area up on Main Street. Really cool because it's sort of these older spaces, which historically, 20 years ago, you wouldn't want to live there. But now you do want to live there, and it's very sought after. Real estate's gone up, but also all these cool little businesses have really started to infuse these neighborhoods within the urban center, and it's just wonderful because you get all these sort of different cultures and different flavors, quite literally, and so it keeps things fresh but also exciting, and you could go out literally every day and have a new experience and try a new food or a new restaurant, and a lot of it's within walking distance, but we also have great transit here. We have the SkyTrain, which was built during the '86 Expo, and it connects everybody everywhere. So it's an easy city to travel around.
That's amazing. Yeah, it sounds like a really great place. I see also like not only is it like an accessible place, lots of good things to do, access to the outdoors in really cool ways, but I think it is interesting what you're saying about your choice for not doing the rural or the suburban thing with your family as much, or you tried it, but you also felt like that wasn't really what we want. When did you make that decision to move back to the kind of urban center for you as a family?
So it would have been for us 13 years ago. We moved back downtown. We had lived downtown, and then we went to an area called Kitsilano, which is just over the bridge from downtown. And nice little area, very cool. We were living across from the beach. It was fun, but it wasn't a great place, like the home that we were living in. It was just because we were renting at the time, and it wasn't a good fit. And then we got pregnant with our second, and we're like, oh geez, family's growing. Maybe we should move out somewhere where we can have a bit more space, and be more family focused. And we made that transition. But then we got there after a few years. We're just like, I think we need to change, man. Like we were missing the city so much and the lifestyle that we had here. And so we transitioned back, and the kids at the time were both, gosh, had they started? Yeah, they were. One was going into kindergarten, the other one was going into grade 2. So that's when we relocated, and that was the only challenge. And I'll be full disclosure here in Vancouver. Sure. Good, the education system is not bad, but there's quite the wait list to get into certain schools, and it's because the downtown has grown so much, like literally up. right? Because real estate is just taken off here in such a big way in the last 10 years. There's been constant development, and a lot of the older 3-story buildings have been knocked down, put up skyscrapers. And so this influx of people with having kids, the schools, they haven't added new schools to the downtown core.
Wow.
So that it can be a big challenge. We've heard of people being on a wait list for 2 years. Now, we were fortunate. We got in there, and my wife is a squeaky wheel. I'll just tell you that right now. Awesome. She'll show up every day, and she'll go in every day to the office. Like I would never do that, but my wife, she's awesome. She's just
it gets the job done, doesn't it? Oh, it's incredible.
It's wild. But yeah, that's a couple things that I've noticed, and especially with young families, it can be really challenging on the education front.
That is interesting. Yeah. So when you had like your kids like with them, like you said, kindergarten, second grade, or something like that, and then
that's right.
They kind of like grew up in a city then. I mean, like all their formative years, all of that. That's a really cool thing. What have you noticed about the nature of parenting in a city context?
Oh, excuse me. Ooh, whoa. Sorry, dry cough there. So, interesting to note. When we first moved back into a condo, they didn't really have any recollection, but for our kids, it was like, wow, we're living in a hotel. Like, that was what they thought. That
was their context.
They think, because they think lobby, they think elevator, there's a doorman. It's like, wow, we're in a hotel now, and they're fighting over who gets to push the button, and
I love that.
And so it was kind of fun that way to see their perspective. And, our kids are pretty easygoing, like they're pretty chill. And for them, they loved it because, like literally across the street, we got a big park. It's a dog park. So lots of dogs, lots of cool animals. Literally a block and a half. And that's where their school was located. Great playground, great big field and green space, plus the seawall. So there was lots of things for them to do. And there's a great community center 3 blocks away, which has lots of wonderful programs and after school programs. And so, we made sure, because it's small living, we tend to find ourselves out a lot more, doing things, socializing, participating. And our kids, my wife and I are very much like that. So the kids ultimately have become like that too. And so they enjoyed it. They really did enjoy it a lot. Now, just so you know, like the formative years that you were mentioning before, a number of years ago, when I was leaving the company I co-founded, we sort of came to a place where we decided that we were going to go traveling for a bit. And awesome. I basically quit my career for 17 years. A month later, my wife quit hers. 3 months after that, actually 2.5, we pulled the kids out of school. And we started traveling. And our intention was to like homeschool sort of, or road school. It ended up being more life schooling. And we ended up traveling for 5 years. Okay? And during those 5 years.
Yes. So long. Wow. How amazing.
It was a while.
What were some of the places you went?
Well, we went all over the U.S. and Canada for the first few years because my father was ill and he lived just outside of Toronto. So we wanted to be close enough that if we needed to get back in a hurry, we could. And sure enough, my dad's cancer progressed. He had pancreatic cancer, and to the point where it eventually took his life. But we were fortunate because we'd already made that transition. We were able to spend the final 6 months with him. We literally went to Ontario. We lived in my mom's, she had a fully furnished rental unit in her basement. And so we just lived in that for those 6 months while having the opportunity to also visit with my dad. And it's interesting how things just work out, right? Because had I not left my career and my wife left hers and pulled the kids out of school, we wouldn't have all had that luxury to do that. So, things work out for a reason sometimes. And
there would have been more of a sense of we're supposed to be anchored in the school and these jobs and all of that, but in that case you had already cleared things up to have the freedom to make that kind of choice to be there. That's incredible. Wow, a real gift of that season.
Thank you. It was. We felt very grateful for that, and after my dad passed, my wife and I were like, okay, well, I want to go overseas now, and we're like, yeah, let's do that. And so we went with the full intention of traveling around Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand. But we started in Bali. and we leased a place for 3 months on Airbnb. So we knew getting there, we'd already have a place. We sort of sussed it out. My wife had been to Bali in her 20s and in her late teens a couple times, just during her backpacking days. And so she already had a general idea of what it would be like. And so we got there, and, you know, it was coming close to the end of that 3 months, and we're looking at each other like, you know, we could stay. What do you think about that? You know, and we look at the kids. Do you guys want to stay? And they're like, yeah, let's stay. You know, and anyways, it turned into 2.5 years. Okay, so it was awesome. But we always told our kids that if they wanted to go back to Vancouver to finish school, we would honor that. And sure enough, you know, they played that card. And so we honored it. My wife and the 2 girls came back about 6 months before I came back, because I had some retreats and some other things that I was doing over there at the time. So I had to finish up those commitments and then move back. And so we were all back here about 2 months before the pandemic. It was funny. Like, our transition was not pandemic based. Our transition back to Vancouver, back to home, was just simply life and lifestyle, and the fact that our kids wanted to finish high school in Vancouver. But those middle school years, they were not in a school system. They weren't living in really any one address. Wow. You know, we were rather nomadic during those years. And I can tell you, the education they gained from that, especially the confidence and the just the worldly experience. And I hear this from other people. So, of course, they're my kids. I'm completely biased. But hearing this constant commentary from other people, like, they'll talk to my girls and they feel like they're talking to another adult. Somebody that's very, you know, kind, attentive, but also can carry a conversation. And also, they didn't have to deal with any of that middle school drama. Okay? Like, you know how it goes. Especially with TikTok and all this other stuff nowadays. I mean, it's intimidating. So it was great, but very different than what most people are accustomed to.
Very different, but it sounds like, man, it's really paid dividends in the sense of that sort of confidence that they're going through in life. And also, I mean, I'm seeing this parallel right now between the way that my wife was raised. So she was homeschooled up north of Seattle, and her dad was a businessman. And so the joke is that, like, being homeschooled by him was kind of like a junior MBA, you know, sort of program. Like, he was just like having them do entrepreneurial things all the time, having them make the calls to government officials, blah, 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 you know, all of these kinds of things.
Wow.
And basically, my wife became, and all of her siblings, they're all ultra competent, high achieving folks who can hang with any situation. It's really remarkable. So I'm definitely seeing, like, some parallel between this willingness to go off the beaten path a little bit with raising kids. And I know that's not for everybody, and it probably depends on the kid and everything, but it sounds like it's really, really worked out very well for you and your family. What did that style of because I'm sure you're still thinking about, like, oh, I really, even though my kids aren't in the school system or whatever, I still want to instill values, information, training, so on. I still want to do that with them. What did that look like for you and your partner to still try to impart something to your kids?
Well, we realized, like, within the first few weeks of us starting the journey, we lacked the patience to teach. And our kids, to be fair, weren't really keen for it either. But we maintained the basics, you know, the reading, the writing, comprehension, as well as arithmetic and various other mathematics, but nothing overly complicated, because, again, at their age just wasn't necessarily relevant. But we got all the books, the school books from the school board, because you can take your kids out of school, but it's for only a fixed period of time. But they have all the resources, and it's also a law here in Canada that when a kid comes back, they automatically go right into the grade that they should be in or would have been in. You don't even have to challenge it. There's no competency test, which is remarkable, quite frankly. But what we did choose to do, and we always knew this would be a plan, was when it did come time, if they wanted to go back into school, we would do condensed tutoring for a good period of time. And we did do that for almost 6 months. So we already knew. So we started in some education centers in Bali, actually, for expats. And so the kids were in there learning the same curriculum that they would have been learning here in our school system. And it was condensed and accelerated so they could basically get caught up And they did. And the neat thing was, though, like we used to take our kids to the networking events and to the retreats, and they'd also be part of a lot of different other clubs and sports. But also they'd come to the various Toastmasters groups we were a part of. And this was all while also living in Bali or while we were traveling in North America. Like we always brought our kids. We were the parents, probably annoying to a lot of people, but we were always bringing our kids. I was always bringing them with us. I was just like, no, they're coming with us. We're a unit here, and they can learn from this. So both my kids, they're great at public speaking. They're very comfortable and confident speaking in front of groups. And, that's not very common for young kids. I remember my daughter at literally at 14 years old giving a speech at this Bali Toastmasters group to a group of 50 people, right? Wow. And they're from all over the world. And there she is giving this 7-minute talk. And just, she nailed it. She nailed it. I was so proud, and I was like, wow, way to go, baby. And so there was other ways that they learned and grew. That I, quite frankly, I'm not here to challenge the school systems or some of the curriculums, but I do know that some of it's a bit dated and not necessarily applicable to the life that we want outside of high school or grade school, So there's the good and the bad of everything. And we just really wanted to focus on developing good human beings. That was our focus.
That's fantastic. That's so great. And even skills in public speaking, that takes a certain sort of individual care and attention to foster that in a person. And I just love that you gave that gift to your kids. It sounds like it's really set them up. I'd love to go a slightly different direction now. And again, I feel like this has all been adjacent to home, like everything from kind of travel and educating and parenting and all of that. I'd love to zoom in on your physical space now. So you've mentioned this room, and I see right behind you, for the folks who aren't, watching the video format of this, there's these framed comic books, this framed artwork. Tell me a little bit about those pieces of work and why it is that it's important to you to display them.
Well, for me, it's just to look at them. Historically, when guys like myself collect comic books, and there's a lot of us out there. The guys that started collecting comics back in the 80s, or even well before that, some of the older guys. But for myself, 46, I started collecting when I was 9, 10 years old, right? And so I'm going back to 1986 and started buying comics. But historically, you keep them in a box. And I like looking at them. I used to love touching them, feeling them, opening them up and smelling the newsprint, right? I just, and enjoying the stories. And for me, that was always just, I love that. And so I think as I reclaimed this space in our home, getting this room back, I wanted to set it up with things that both itched my nostalgic little itch, as well as it was things that I like to look at. It's things that bring me joy and happiness, And of course, my wife has her own artwork, and so she gets every other wall in the house. But these are my walls, This is your wall. These are my walls, and so things that I've collected, and I've got some artist signed prints here, and like Neil Adams, and just some really well known. And unfortunately, many of these artists have passed in the last few years, but the works live on, and for me, it's just I love having it, So I got some Superman comics here, some more iconic covers. I got Star Wars #1 over there. I got these metal prints that were done by an artist. These etchings, really cool. Neil Adams classic covers of Superman and Batman, and then I got some. John Cleese was here in town last year, and he did a show, and they had a poster for the event. So I got the poster, and I got him to sign it. So I've got that framed there as well, and awesome. I've got all sorts of stuff. It's all and I didn't even show you, but I've got my I've also got some figures, the little action figures. I've got this above my printer and scanner here on the wall. I've got a bunch of these little things, and they're all set up on that too. Because as a kid, I used to love that stuff, but now as an adult, I don't necessarily play with them, but I like having them on display because it's just again. It's just things that bring me back to that time in my life, It inspires me.
Joy and nostalgia. Inspiration. I love that. What do you think that's done to have a space like that for you to kind of inhabit on a regular basis? What does that actually open up in terms of mindset, values, even actions in your life? What does that open up for you?
Well, for me, I'm a creator. I love to create. I love creating content and videos. And really, my whole reason for being on social media is to inspire motivate and educate, and hopefully do it in a fun way that brings a smile to a face, you know? And those are sort of the filters through which I like to do a lot of what I do. And this space gets me into that sort of zone, if you will, that sort of flow state, because it's just a calm space for me. I look around on the wall, instantly I just feel grounded, you know, and really present. And so, you know, here I've got my standing desk. I'm sitting right now, but I have my standing desk, you know, my lights here. Like the room's set up for me. You know, it's my space, and it's what I love. And but it's also set up in such a way that's highly functional for the things that I do, both professionally, but also personally. And that was important. And it's not a big space. You know, this is not a big space. It's like 10 by maybe 7. You know, so it's not a huge space. Yeah. But for me and what I need, it's great. It's just right.
That's fantastic. I'm definitely seeing the connection then there, because if these are a bunch of items that are really inspiring to you in a space that's really functional for you to do work that is about inspiring other people, it would make sense that you would want that space to set that tone for you. So you're reminded of yourself. There's like a self-possession. I know who I am. I'm going to go give that to the world and be of service to other people. Like, I mean, that's great that you were able to give that sort of attention to that environment to lead your state of mind, your energy, in order to be that for other people. That's so cool.
Thank you.
When did you start doing work and kind of creating? I'm hearing retreats and everything like that too. How did that begin for you?
Oh, well, you know, I had 17 years of building a retail company. And during those 17 years, when you do something for so long, you get really proficient at it, you know? And also I've been someone that I like to learn, but I also like to grow. But also if I got the right mentor and the right people around me that I can model the right things, the right habits, the right actions to achieve certain things, well, I'm going to excel even quicker. And I was very fortunate that I had those things all aligned when I really started to get into this entrepreneurial journey with that past company. And it was also in a space that I loved, you know, selling fitness equipment, accessories, supplements, apparel. Basically, it was a toy store for those that want to get healthy. And I loved it. You know, I absolutely loved it. I really did get a lot of fulfillment from serving a community or multiple communities as we grew to just helping people maintain a certain level of health and well-being, but also tap into that longevity and vitality that we all have access to. If we can get it our own way and create some healthier habits, right? And so that for me, that was really critical. And I was always more the COO/CMO. You know, I was doing a lot of the marketing initiatives. I had a lot of ideas around copywriting and ways to tell a story, because that was stuff that I was always passionate about. My background at university was English Lit and philosophy.
Oh
so
gosh,
ultimately, you understand why I got into selling fitness equipment. I mean,
I was an English Lit person too, and also am into weightlifting. So there is some parallel between what we're talking about. I love it. This is
Dude,
so funny. But it also does
That's
feel like,
awesome.
oh, how did these things come together? Yeah.
Seriously, though, like the thing is with that passion with writing and reading and just consuming some of the great literature, right? But also the way philosophers think and present, and whether they're using logic or emotions to influence you, regardless, I just found that in itself very inspiring for me. And so transitioning into this thing that I love, which is helping people with their fitness, but also at the same time being able to tell a great story. You know, a story that can help people see themselves as that hero and then navigate some of the similar things. Because we all want the same thing. We all want to be able to wake up in the morning and feel great. And you know what? Everyone's entitled to that. And they should be feeling that. Unfortunately, things have been normalized now that unhealthy is normal. You know, it's been normalized, you know, and listen, I can speak to this because as a kid, I was morbidly obese up until the age of 15. All right. And people still don't believe that. I'm like, go to my website. I got the photos there. You can take a look at them. But so I know what it's like to be on the other end of the spectrum, you know, and so helping people navigate that is really important to me. And that's where the creation side of things really taps in, because, you know, we are empathetic beings for the most part. You know, we are emotional beings. We're not humans that choose to be emotional. We're just emotional humans. Like, it's just who we are. But we've learned and grown as a culture, as a society, through the millennia, through storytelling. And so that's really where the creative juices for me always. I like to have a space that inspires me. I like to connect with people that inspire me. And because that often will turn me on to new ideas or ways of presenting ideas or a story that can help inspire someone to take that first action, so they can start to realize some of those changes or shifts for themselves. So yeah, that's really where it all connects.
Great.
Yeah.
I love that. What an interesting thing that, storytelling is in some ways at the root of a lot of what you're saying, like this ability to understand a story, be moved by a story, communicate a story to other people, even like be inspired by these comic books all around you and so on. Like what an interesting through line through that I'm noticing. How cool. Well, okay, this has been so fun. I want to take it another direction because I just want to keep covering some ground here. So let's play a this or that. When homeschooling really, really great, it looks like this. When home's gone sideways, it looks like that. What would you say are some of the differentiators for you?
Okay, well, when it's going well, the kids are engaged. They're having fun. They're actually looking forward to learning. When it's not going well, you get challenged to keep the bums in the seat long enough to learn anything or to complete something. They get those jitters, and my kids are kind of like me that way, and my wife. Like we're people that are always on the go. Like we just are. We're always doing something.
Yeah.
And so if the kids aren't engaged and we're not presenting the information in a way that they want it to be presented, and when I say want it, I don't even think they could articulate it, but we could tell over time. You just start to see the patterns, right? And we learned that if we go to a national park, we take them to a museum, we take them to a gallery, we take them to a performance, a play, as an example. But we ask them to do a little bit of research about that before we end up there, so they can talk about it, tell us about it. That got them super hyped and engaged. We made sure they both had iPads, growing up, and we limited that, of course, and would recommend what was okay and what wasn't okay, and I mean, you got to do that as parents, especially today. I mean, I'm talking like a decade ago when we first started that, right? And it's changed a lot since then. But for us, that was their access to not only friends that were back here in Vancouver or Canada or other parts that places that they met people, but in a way that also became a reward. Do you know what I mean? Like we would give them the ability, if they complete assignments, they did what we asked them to, and they came back and excited and learned something. Well, okay, great. You're welcome to use that for some more personal things, not just the schooling or the learning, right? And so that worked really well. And the funny thing was, my one daughter, she discovered an app called Wattpad, and Wattpad is basically a writing platform. And she totally got into this. It was almost like role playing. Like you would be working with a group of people, and you'd be telling stories and creating narratives. And she's like an early teenager at this time, and just dove all into that. And so her personal time was spent writing stories. And I was like,
how amazing!
Right, and I'll tell you, her proficiency at English, like when our kids went back into high school, because they chose to go back in, we didn't force them to. Right, I was actually like, "Are you guys sure you want to go back?" I was like, "I didn't really want to leave Bali." Full disclosure, I didn't. I was like, I kind of like. I'm like,
how about we just hang out in Bali longer? Yeah.
Dude, I was totally down for that, and but no, our kids really wanted to go back to school, and because they wanted to go back into school, they were extremely motivated to learn. So during that 6 month of it was kind of like a homeschooling center. It was all these expats that were basically in Bali putting all their kids in this room, and there was two teachers, and they were getting paid a certain amount per head, but it was all different age groups, but they would help them learn the different curriculums that they needed to learn. And they were super motivated, and they were dialed in. So they were now the ones really leading that, not so much my wife and I. So it was a different situation, right? And I know that's not common. And I still often wonder, I'm like, they obviously take after their mom, because that would not have been me at that age, But,
sure.
but regardless, I would have been like at the beach surfing. But no, they were really dedicated to it. So those are a couple little things. Great. The engagement piece, I think, is really important.
That makes a lot of sense, and especially thinking about your. I'm experiencing it. I only got a toddler right now, but like how much more that's going to compound over the years, and just how much like the tone of a kid's life really sets the tone of a home. I could totally see that. So keeping a kid engaged, wanting to learn, all of that makes a lot of sense to me. Well, Dai, this has been an incredible conversation, and I'm just so thankful for your openness and your energy, and I hope and I believe a lot of people probably learned a whole lot by just getting to hear about your life and the things that were decisions you faced, how you raised your kids, all of those kinds of things. If you were to leave folks listening, and myself, honestly, with just one piece of advice or recommendation for how to improve their quality of life at home, what would you recommend?
Well, I'll be two things, and I'll try to keep this brief. The first one is, your significant partner, that romantic relationship that you have. When all of a sudden everything is happening at home, and we saw this during the pandemic, it strained a lot of relationships. I saw it a lot with my friends. They weren't used to, we had traveled around the U.S. in an SUV for a couple of years. Listen, we got really good at living in a small space together. So the pandemics was a breeze for us, right?
Yeah, but you'd already been training for it in some ways.
Totally. Yeah, we were pretty well conditioned, But that romantic relationship with your partner, I know it's one that can be challenged when all of a sudden everything just is now all in one place. And, especially if you're both there and you're both involved with the kids and you're also working. So it's sort of, there's this constant blend of everything now, all into one. My wife and I found it difficult at times to have that romantic connection, that intimate connection as partners do, And so, and I'm not talking sexual here, I'm just talking about the mental and the physical, just the ability to connect and just be there intentionally for one another and talk about the big topics, but also the fun topics. And so what worked for us, and I really commend my wife for this idea, she's like, we need a dedicated date night and we got to make this non-negotiable.
Whoa.
Huge. Non-negotiable. And we sync up our calendars, okay? It's blocked Saturday nights from 5 to 10. And it's been like that for years and years and years. To the point that our friends don't ask us to do anything on Saturday nights because they're like, no, unless they're going out and doing something, they're like, hey, do you guys want to do your date night with us? And then we might consider it. But it's a non-negotiable. So we know every week we're going to have this block of intentional time to connect, as partners in life. Not just parents that are homeschooling or life schooling or road schooling, not like we're trying to manage a house. It's just, and we try to make sure that we go outside of the home for that. We don't want to stay at home because we do so much at home already. So that's been a really big one for us personally as a relationship. And as I say in a lot of my profiles, I've been dating my wife for 23 years. And I'm going to continue to date her because she's a very different person today than who she was 23 years ago. But unless I continued to date her, I would never know that. And so that's the one piece. And then when it comes to the kids, games are great. Okay, board games. We made sure to bring some, or we would source them on Marketplace. Even living in Bali, we would order things or ask people to bring them in their suitcases because the games are fun, especially they can be educational. And you can check a lot of boxes, but kids love to learn through that fashion. And I'm talking old school. I'm not talking the digital games like the old DVDs or the apps. I'm talking like the old board games. You throw them on the table, man. You set it up. Both my kids got into crib while we were living in Bali, which is great for math. It's great for math,
Okay, interesting. Wow.
Yeah, cribbage, cribbage, you got to count points,
okay, cribbage. I was just
cribbage,
sorry,
I don't know
that game.
Cribbage.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, yeah, and chess.
I grew up, amazing.
Oh, you grew up? Sorry, go ahead. What were you saying?
I grew up playing cribbage on my grandpa's lap, and it's just like, that is why I can do math still to this day. That's why, yeah.
It's awesome, right? And so that's the other piece I would like to say as far as the engagement's concerned. Those are little strategies and just really became more lifestyle for us that worked really, really well. And so those are a couple tips I like to leave with people. Try it and see what happens. What do you got to lose, right?
I think it's a enticing idea and also a real challenge to think of a non-negotiable date night, and also injecting this fun through tabletop board games, card games. Make that part of even the way that kids are learning. What a great idea! Those are great pieces of advice. Thank you.
Awesome.
So, Dai, I've loved having a conversation with you, and I'm sure lots of people listening have are also just like, okay, what is this guy up to? How would I get in touch with him? So what are the sort of things that you're working on? What could people do to connect with you moving forward?
Well, I'm pretty active on social media. I've even just joined Threads, of all places. I don't know if you heard of Threads, the Instagram Threads. It reminds me, it's like Tumblr and Twitter got together and had a baby. And I swear, that's what it's kind of feeling like right now. But I love the simplicity of it. But regardless, I'm really active on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And so if you connect with me on those platforms, like as long as you can spell my name, and don't worry, those platforms are so used to people misspelling my name, it usually comes up as the suggestion.
Wow.
Perfect. But just message me, shoot me a DM, and be like, hey, I'm thinking of Bali. Here's what I'm going to do. Or this is where I want to go. Or maybe you just want some introductions to some cool things to do and people to chat with. Well, listen, I'm game. I love conversations. I love connecting with people. So those are the easiest ways to get a hold of me online. And as far as what I'm doing, I love to connect with audiences. So I do a lot of speaking, keynoting. I really enjoy that. But I also love my writing and producing good content, as well as I offer coaching and consulting services, both personally and professionally, most often both combined, as we're all multifaceted individuals and we want to improve in all areas, right? So those are a lot of the fun stuff I'm doing. And I appreciate you asking that, by the way, Matt. Thank you.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I'm going to collect your profiles and stuff, and I'll put it in a companion blog post so people, if they're interested in like hearing more, getting connected, just take a look in the show notes. You'll see a companion blog post. I'll give you a link so that you could go check out what Dai's up to, in a lickety split. So thank you very much, Dai, for being an incredible conversation partner on this. And I just really appreciate you giving it the time. So thank you.
Thank you, Matt. And thanks for creating a space for these conversations to happen. I know you probably don't get thanked very much, or at least not often enough as far as I'm concerned, but I know how much energy and time and resources go into create a platform like this. And I just want to say thank you for providing this for all of us. And I'm very grateful to have been a part of it. And just a small little part of it, but a part of it nonetheless. And so thank you.
Well, much gratitude. Thank you for saying that. Well, this has been an episode of Home Life for Extraordinary Impact, everybody. Thank you all for listening. And until next time. Thanks for listening to Home Life for Extraordinary Impact. I hope you enjoyed listening as much as I enjoyed putting it together for you. Please take a moment to rate it, like it, and subscribe wherever you have listened or watched. If you really loved it, check the link in the show notes to become a premium subscriber to support the ongoing work of this project and to unlock some exclusive premium episodes. Home Life for Extraordinary Impact is a project of Home Life Design Lab. Find out more at homelifedesignlab.com, where you can sign up for the newsletter and follow along on Instagram and TikTok. Thanks.